The gravel drive, pitted and choked with weeds, stretched before me like a warning. Blackwood Manor loomed at the end of it, a hulking silhouette against the bruised Pacific Northwest sky. Rain, a fine, persistent mist, coated everything in a sheen of melancholy. My old pickup rattling from the long journey felt laughably small against the estate's formidable presence. I cut the engine, and the sudden silence was profound, broken only by the drip of water from ancient firs. This was it, my inheritance, my escape. The lawyer, a sharp-suited man who smelled faintly of old paper and anxiety, had passed me the heavy iron key with a look that suggested I was either very brave or very foolish. Your great-aunt Elara, he'd explained, was particular about her privacy. Understatement of the century, apparently. She'd lived here for 50 years, a self-imposed exile, dying alone in one of its vast, empty rooms. And now it was mine. A fresh start, I'd told myself. A chance to outrun the echoes of my own life, to find some quiet in this desolate corner of the world. But standing there, gazing up at the manor's skeletal chimneys clawing at the gray sky, quiet felt less like peace and more like a suffocating absence. The house was a gothic behemoth, all dark timber and crumbling stone, with a dozen windows like vacant eyes staring out from under heavy moss-laden eaves. Gnarled ivy, thick as my arm, wrestled with the walls, its tendrils reaching into every crack, every crevice. It wasn't just overgrown, it was consumed. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth, decaying leaves, and something else. A faint, cloying sweetness that was almost sickly, like overripe fruit left too long in the sun. I stepped out of the truck, the damp chill immediately seeping into my bones. The gravel crunched under my boots, a lonely sound. The isolation was absolute. The only sound was the drip of water from the trees, a brittle symphony under the towering ancient firs. The air itself seemed to thicken, pressing in, an invisible, crushing weight. For a moment, a stark image flashed in my mind. The gray, suffocating expanse of a prison yard in thick fog. A place of endless, muted despair. My determination, a fragile shield I'd cultivated over months, wavered. But I pushed through it. No turning back. I pushed the door inward. It dragged across the floorboards with a long, drawn-out shriek, kicking up plumes of ancient dust that danced in the sliver of weak daylight. It tasted of dust, mildew, and something else indefinable, something ancient and still. A sweeping staircase, its banister intricately carved but coated in a thick layer of grime, ascended into the gloom. Cobwebs, thick and gray, draped like spectral lace from every chandelier and corner. I stepped inside, pulling the door shut behind me. The thud resonated through the house, a final, definitive sound. My footsteps on the wide plank floor sounded unnaturally loud. I moved slowly, letting my eyes adjust, letting the manor reveal itself. To my left, a vast sitting room filled with shrouded furniture looked like a graveyard of forgotten elegance. To my right, a dining room, equally grand and equally desolate. Everything was draped, covered, preserved in a mausoleum of linen sheets. Elara's presence, or rather her absence, was palpable. This wasn't just a house. It was a sealed tomb. I wandered deeper, drawn by a strange curiosity that warred with a prickling unease. The silence wasn't empty. It was pregnant, waiting. The floorboards creaked under my weight, and I imagined the house sighing, stirring. I found a study, or what I assumed was one. Bookshelves lined the walls, overflowing with thick, leather-bound volumes, many on botany, some on obscure folklore. A heavy oak desk was still piled with papers, fossilized inkwells, and a collection of dried pressed leaves, their colors muted to a uniform sepia. I couldn't make out the words in the dim light. Through a large, grimy window in the study, I could see what must have been Elara's infamous gardens. They weren't manicured, or even wild in a natural way. Trees with twisted limbs, shrubs with unnaturally broad leaves, and vines that seemed to writhe and coil like slumbering serpents. My great-aunt, the reclusive botanist. She hadn't just tended a garden, I realized. She'd cultivated a wilderness, and the thought, unbidden, sent a shiver down my spine. What kind of wilderness? A faint scuttling sound high in the rafters made me jump. My head snapped up, but there was nothing. Just the intricate lattice of aged beams disappearing into the gloom. The house, I thought, was settling. Or perhaps it was merely breathing. Elara had spent her life here, alone, surrounded by her plants, her books, and whatever secrets this house held. A determined woman, perhaps. Or a desperate one. I wondered what he had been trying to escape, or, more disturbingly, what he had been trying to create. The weight of the house pressed in on me, a physical presence. The air, already thick with the scent of decay, seemed to grow heavier, imbued with an almost imperceptible earthy tang that made the hair on my arm stand on end. And something, I was certain, was already watching me. I ran a hand over the cold, rough surface of the desk, the lingering chill a stark contrast to the distant, almost imagined warmth of the Pacific Northwest summer. The scuttling sound hadn't returned. Just the house, I told myself, settling into its age, exhaling dust and memories. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to impose some order on the library, stacking forgotten journals and cataloging mildewed tomes. It was a futile effort. Every time I turned my back, a stack seemed to lean more precariously. A book spine seemed to shift slightly on its shelf. My eyes played tricks on me, or so I assumed. Later, as dusk bled into the vast windows, painting the sky in bruised purples and grays, I found myself in the cavernous main hall. The silence was not empty, but full, pregnant with an unseen presence. Then, faint as a moth's wing against glass, I heard it. Not words, not quite, but a sibilant hiss, like dry leaves skittering across stone. It seemed to coil from the very walls themselves, a breath held for decades, finally released. I stopped, holding my breath, straining my ears. Nothing. Just the slow, rhythmic creak of the old house, the groan of timbers under the vast, unseen weight of its roof. I dismissed it as the wind, a trick of the acoustics, a tired mind. But the unease had taken root. Sleep offered little solace. Every groan of a floorboard above me, every tick and sigh of the settling wood seemed deliberate, a slow, methodical approach. I was no longer in my bed. A dense, featureless white enveloped everything beyond a few feet. I was standing on cracked asphalt, the faint metallic tang of rust and damp concrete filling my nostrils. I couldn't see the walls, couldn't see the watchtowers, but I felt them, looming somewhere just beyond the visible world, a perimeter of unseen eyes. The fog was a living thing, swirling, coiling, momentarily forming vague, indistinct shapes that dissolved before my mind could grasp them. A profound loneliness, sharper and more immediate than any I'd felt since the tragedy, gripped me. I was utterly alone, yet the sensation of being observed was palpable, heavy as the fog itself. There was someone watching me from the unseen towers. I tried to shake it off, the memory of the prison yard, the thick, blinding fog. It was just a dream, a byproduct of stress and a new, unsettling environment. Determined to exert some control over my surroundings, I decided to explore the manor more thoroughly the next morning. If the house was going to play tricks on my mind, I would learn its secrets. I needed to find the source of the persistent, earthy smell that seemed to permeate certain sections of the ground floor, a scent far richer and more complex than simple damp or decay. I followed the faint, almost imperceptible drafts, the subtle shifts in temperature. The air grew heavier, humid, carrying a potent green fragrance. It was a smell of rich soil and burgeoning life, but with an underlying sweetness that bordered on cloying. I pushed open a heavy, unmarked door, its wood swollen and resistant, and stepped into a world apart. Before me lay Elara's conservatory. It wasn't merely a room. It was a sprawling, glass-domed ecosystem that seemed to have swallowed half the house. The air was a tropical blast of humidity, thick and sweet with the scent of countless exotic blooms, but also something else, something deep and fungal. Giant ferns unfurled fronds like prehistoric wings, their undersides coated in a fine, glistening dew. Flowers I had never seen, with petals the color of bruised flesh and stamens that pulsed with an unsettling, almost liquid glow, bloomed in profusion. This wasn't just overgrown, it was alive. The plants seemed to writhe, their tendrils reaching, their leaves rustling even in the still air. I saw what Elara had been tending, not just a garden, but a jungle, a living, breathing entity that had consumed its container. It felt like a dense mat of roots, or perhaps a mycelial network spreading across the floor. A low hum vibrated in the air, a sound I hadn't noticed at first, attributing it to insects. But there were no insects I could see. The hum was deep, resonant, emanating from the very fabric of the conservatory, from the plants themselves. Not a rustle, not the wind, but a distinct, multi-layered murmur that seemed to rise from the dense foliage around me, a chorus of sibilant breaths. It was too soft to discern words, but the intent was clear. It was a greeting, or a warning. My breath hitched. My heart hammered, no longer a cliché, but a frantic drum against my ribs. This was no old house settling, no trick of the light or sound. This was something else entirely. The conservatory, Elara's secret world, wasn't just a collection of plants. It was a living, sentient thing, and I had just walked into its core. I felt a subtle tug on my sleeve, a fleeting touch against my cheek, though nothing was there. The plants seemed to lean towards me, their fleshy petals unfurling just a fraction more, as if in anticipation. I was no longer merely exploring. I was being observed. And perhaps I was being welcomed. The thought sent a jolt of ice through my veins. I'd spent the rest of the previous afternoon trying to make sense of the manor's labyrinthine layout, pushing open creaking doors, peering into shadowed rooms filled with shrouded furniture. It grew stronger as I ventured further into the manor's eastern wing, past a drawing room where dust motes danced in the slivers of light, and a dining hall long stripped of its grandeur. The air became noticeably warmer, heavier, saturated with moisture. The metallic scent of copper mingled with the earthy dampness here, and a low, resonant hum vibrated faintly through the floorboards. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for one of the tarnished brass handles. A part of me, the part that still clung to reason, urged me to turn back, to leave this wing unexplored. But another, deeper current, a morbid curiosity, pulled me forward. The doors groaned open, revealing not a room, but a vast, glass-domed expanse. This was the conservatory. It was a smell unlike anything I'd ever encountered in a garden. A cloying sweetness mixed with something acrid, almost medicinal. My eyes struggled to adjust to the dim, filtered light that poured through the grimy panes of the dome, diffused by the sheer density of the foliage. It wasn't a garden. It was a jungle. A sprawling, tangled mass of plants I couldn't begin to identify. They weren't the familiar ferns and palms of a typical conservatory. These were alien, grotesque. Leaves the color of bruised plums unfurled from thick, segmented stems, some bristling with delicate, almost hair-like tendrils that seemed to writhe in the stagnant air. Others bore blooms like gaping mouths, petals unfurling in shades of deep maroon and sickly yellow, their centers a mass of glistening, fleshy filaments. There were plants that seemed to weep a viscous amber sap, and others with bark like flaking skin. The The sheer volume of growth was overwhelming, a suffocating embrace of chlorophyll and decay. The humidity made my clothes cling to me instantly. Water dripped steadily from unseen leaves onto the damp, moss-covered flagstones beneath my feet, creating a constant, soft patter that echoed in the vast space. I walked deeper, feeling like an intruder in a world that wasn't meant for human eyes. The path, once probably a neat stone walkway, was now choked with roots that snaked across the floor like petrified veins, forcing me to step carefully. The leaves, some as broad as dinner plates, brushed against my face, cool and clammy. I could feel a faint vibration in the ground, a subtle thrum that resonated in my chest. Amidst this botanical chaos, I spotted a small, overturned wooden table, half swallowed by a particularly aggressive vine with leaves like leathery wings. Nearby, almost hidden under a cluster of plants that resembled coiled snakes, was a stack of leather-bound books, Elara's journals. My hands trembled as I carefully pulled them free, dislodging a cascade of damp earth and tiny, white, segmented insects that scurried away into the undergrowth. The leather was supple, softened by the relentless humidity. I found a relatively clear spot on a mossy stone bench, pulling a few grasping tendrils away to sit. The air here was even heavier, the scent of the strange blooms more potent, almost intoxicating. I opened the top journal. The handwriting was elegant, precise, but as I flipped through the pages, it became increasingly erratic, scrawled, sometimes almost illegible. Dates stretched back decades. Initially, the entries detailed botanical observations, notes on soil composition, light cycles, and propagation techniques for exotic species. But then, a shift. Day 147. The new specimen thrives. Growth rate phenomenal. Unnerving. Day 203. It responds to the lunar cycle, I am certain. Pulsations observed at full moon. A faint luminescence. My brow furrowed. What was she talking about? This wasn't standard botany. Day 310. The root. It expands, deeper, wider. The house itself feels receptive. A symbiotic relationship, perhaps? Or parasitic? My gaze flickered around the conservatory. It demands. Not water, not light. Something else. I feel its hunger. The words here were smeared, as if written in haste or distress. The tendrils seek purchase. The journal slipped slightly in my damp hand. I glanced at the dense foliage around me. Was that faint rustling just the wind, or something moving within the plants? Beyond the conservatory, through the walls, beneath the floors, Blackwood Manor is no longer merely a dwelling. It is its vessel. The house? A vessel? It wasn't my imagination. It was real. Day 601. The harvest approaches. A new host. It will need a new host. The last entry on the page was a single sprawling word, underlined multiple times. Blake. My own name, scrawled by my great-aunt, in a journal documenting something monstrous, something alive and hungry, something that had claimed Blackwood Manor. I wasn't just an heir to a house, I was a marked man. A sound like a heavy, wet exhalation. It was so faint, so deep within the house's green heart, I almost convinced myself it was just the old pipes, or the wind groaning through the eaves. But then I looked at my name, written in Elara's hand, in a journal detailing something utterly monstrous, and the sound solidified into something real, something that had just responded. A shiver, colder than any draft, traced a path up my spine. The air in the study, already thick with the scent of decaying paper and damp earth, suddenly felt heavier, pressing in. I clutched the journal, its pages now feeling less like paper and more like flayed skin. Old house, settling, pipes, wind. But the thumping came again, a little closer this time. A slow, deliberate thump, thump, like something enormous and soft being dragged. It wasn't coming from the walls, not exactly. My gaze swept the room. Nothing overtly menacing, just the familiar clutter of Elara's life. The air felt charged, expectant. As I moved toward the doorway, my hand brushed against a small, ornate porcelain figurine of a bird on a nearby shelf. It wobbled precariously, then toppled, shattering on the polished wood floor with a sharp crack that made me jump. I hadn't even touched it with any force. It was as if the air itself had decided it should fall. Later, in the kitchen, making myself a cup of instant coffee, a pathetic attempt at normalcy, I noticed the kettle. I distinctly remembered leaving it on the back burner away from the edge. Now it was directly in the center of the stovetop, its spout pointing accusingly towards me. My hand paused mid-reach for the sugar. A trick of memory. Or something else. The idea that I was being toyed with, subtly, insidiously, began to take root. I walked through the manor, a cup of lukewarm coffee clutched in my hand, trying to reassert some control over my rapidly fraying nerves. Each floorboard creaked with a new, unsettling resonance. The house was no longer a silent, dusty monument. It was a vast, breathing organism, and I was inside its lungs. Passing a tall, antique mirror in the main hall, I caught my reflection. My heart gave a sickening lurch. I stared at my true reflection, normal again, but the image of that distorted face, that phantom movement, was burned into my mind. I wasn't just seeing things. I was being seen. The feeling intensified. Every time I turned, I expected to see something, but there was never anything concrete. Just the impression of something having just moved, just having slipped out of sight. Anyone. A colleague, the detective who'd handled Elara's case, even my estranged sister. Just to hear a human voice, to confirm the outside world still existed. I pulled out my phone. No signal. I tried again, walking to different windows, even venturing onto the overgrown veranda. Nothing. Not even a single bar. Panic began to coil in my gut. I remembered seeing an old landline phone in the study. I rushed back, fumbling with the receiver. Dead. Completely, utterly dead. I tried plugging my phone into a charger, hoping to at least get a data signal for email, but the outlet was inert. The house was not just isolating me, it was actively severing my connection. I looked out a tall, grime-streaked window. The fog outside was thick, pressing against the glass, making the world beyond an indistinct smear. The manor, with its sprawling, encroaching growths, had become my cell. A low groan, deep and resonant, vibrated through the floorboards beneath my feet. It wasn't a structural groan, not the settling of old timber. It was organic, like the sound of something vast and ancient shifting its weight. I stood in the center of the study, the journal still clutched in my hand, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My determination, though battered, held. I was scared, yes, truly terrified, but beneath it, a desperate need to understand surged. Elara had known, he had documented it, and I was her next host, and it was hungry. But the shadows seemed deeper, clinging to the corners like something alive, waiting. The air, already heavy with the scent of dust and dried herbs, now carried an undercurrent, faint but insistent, like damp earth after a long rain, or something even richer, more fertile, something that made the hairs on my arms prickle. Sleep, when it finally came, was a battlefield. I tossed and turned, tangled in sheets that felt like damp shrouds. The dreams were vivid, too real, a kaleidoscope of green and brown. I was back in the conservatory, but it was vast, stretching beyond the glass walls, an endless jungle of Elara's peculiar specimens. The vines pulsed, their surfaces slick and obsidian, and I could hear them, a low, guttural hum that vibrated in my bones. They writhed, slow and deliberate, reaching, always reaching. I woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat, the taste of loam and something metallic on my tongue. The sunlight streaming through the window was a shock, too bright, too normal. But the hum, that low, resonant thrum, lingered in the air. I shook my head, trying to clear it, blaming residual nightmare energy. But as I moved through the manor that day, the hum persisted, a phantom vibration in the floorboards, a subtle pressure behind my eyes. The house seemed to watch me. My mind, I told myself, was playing tricks. Grief, isolation, the sheer weirdness of Blackwood Manor, it was all getting to me. I was determined to resist, to hold on to my grip on reality. My feet, however, seemed to have other ideas. I found myself drawn again and again towards the conservatory. The air inside felt thicker, warmer, almost cloying. One afternoon, the pull became undeniable. The air was heavy, humid, clinging to my skin. And then I saw it. It was no bigger than a marble, but it pulsed with a faint, ethereal green light, a bioluminescent spore. It wasn't shining brightly, not like a glow stick, but rather it held its own dim inner light, a soft, inviting beacon in the gloom. I knelt, my fingers trembling as I reached for it. The moment my fingertips brushed its surface, a jolt went through me, not painful, but deeply resonant, like striking a tuning fork. The light intensified slightly, a soft, welcoming glow. It felt warm, strangely alive, almost kind. A wave of calm washed over me, displacing the gnawing anxiety that had been my constant companion since arriving here. It was a perfect, unblemished sphere, smooth and cool to the touch. But beneath the calm, something else stirred. A feeling of profound rightness. This was what I needed. This was what I'd been looking for. A deep, primal urge blossomed in my chest, a powerful, unsettling compulsion. I wanted to hold it, to keep it close, to absorb its quiet luminescence. It wasn't just a desire. It was a need, something that gnawed at me, insisting. My mind screamed at me to drop it, to run, to smash it, but my hand refused to obey. My fingers closed around the spore, cradling it gently, possessively. The soft green light pulsed against my palm, a tiny, living heart. My sanity, I realized, was no longer entirely my own. The house, Elara's garden, this strange, glowing thing in my hand, they were weaving themselves into the fabric of my thoughts, blurring the edges of what was real and what was merely a persistent, beautiful illusion. And I found, to my horror, that I didn't want to let go. My gaze swept the room, but the shadows seemed deeper, clinging to the corners like they were waiting. My chest felt tight. I shouldn't have stopped. Not now. The answers, or at least the path to them, were still there, resting under my hand. I pulled the journal back, my fingers tracing the faded script on the cover. Elara's precise, elegant handwriting, so at odds with the chaos I suspected lay within. I flipped past the last entry I'd read, the one about the manor's needs, and found a page dated several years prior. The early entries were mundane enough. Observations on soil composition, light exposure, the particular growth patterns of local ferns. The tone was academic, detached, the work of a dedicated botanist. But then a shift. Not sound, not truly, but a resonance. A vibration in the roots. They speak of ancient things, of slow, deep hunger. My colleagues would call it delusion. Colleagues? Had she tried to share this? I could almost hear the dismissive laughter, the quiet suggestions for rest. But Elara hadn't sought rest. She'd retreated deeper into the manor, deeper into whatever this was. They communicate through the mycelial networks, a vast subterranean brain. The trees, the fungi, even the smallest mosses, all connected. And they are aware, they observe, they choose. The words crawled over my skin. Choose. What did they choose, and for what purpose? I remembered the tangled, thick growths in the conservatory, the way they seemed to pulse, to almost breathe. This wasn't just a garden. It was an organism. The entries became less legible, the handwriting more frantic, the ink sometimes smeared as if Elara had been writing in haste, or perhaps distress. The manor is their heart, the soil its arteries. It requires sustenance, not water, not light alone, something more profound, life. They demand it, and I provide. My eyes widened, scanning the page again, searching for clarification, for a way to rationalize this. Provide. The word echoed in the silent study, heavy and sinister. Provide. What? My mind flashed to the stories I'd heard as a kid, hushed tales of old, forgotten rituals, of things buried beneath the earth. It wasn't just my imagination, was it? Elara believed they were watching. They are not evil, not in the human sense. They are simply hungry, and they reward devotion. I feel them growing within me, expanding my perception, showing me things beyond the veil. The thought was grotesque, a parasitic invasion. My hands started to tremble, the journal suddenly feeling heavy, tainted. This wasn't just madness, it was a horrifying acceptance of it. Elara hadn't just gone insane, she'd embraced something monstrous. I flipped forward, desperate for an end, a resolution, anything to break the spell of her words. The final entries were almost indecipherable, scrawled in a shaky hand. The new host will understand. The manor calls, its roots entwine, the cycle continues. Blake. He will see. He will feed. He will become. My name, my own name, written in her deranged hand. The blood drained from my face. I stumbled back from the desk, knocking the chair over with a clatter that jarred me to my bones. The sound seemed to reverberate through the very walls, a low thrum that was suddenly everywhere. My mind raced, struggling to process the implications. And now, I was here. The new host, the next sacrifice. The words, "He will feed," echoed in the chambers of my mind, stark and terrifying. What had she fed it? And what did it expect from me? I was trapped here, just as Elara had been, caught in a web spun from roots and madness. This wasn't just some inherited property with a few eccentricities. Now it was reaching for me. I could almost feel the tendrils, unseen but palpable, creeping through the floorboards, up the walls, seeking purchase. I wasn't just reading about Elara's descent. I was living it. The name, my name, staring back at me from the crinkled page of Elara's journal, was a cold shock. Blake. Not a casual mention, not a passing thought, but etched there, underlined twice in what looked like dry, dark crimson. My own blood, perhaps? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. It was everywhere, the house itself now a vast, living drum. My mind raced, struggling to grasp the implication. She knew. Elara knew I was coming. Or worse, he had planned for it. Planned for me. This wasn't just a discovery. It was a summons. A trap. I wasn't going to be a victim. Not again. Not after everything. I righted the chair, my hands trembling, and forced myself to sit. I had to understand. I spent hours hunched over the journals, poring over every page, every pressed flower, every obscure diagram. The thrumming was a constant companion now, a low internal hum that made my bones ache. My eyes burned, tracing lines of script that often dissolved into abstract patterns, intertwining vines, or what looked like anatomical sketches of some alien organ. Then I saw it. Tucked almost invisibly into the margin of a page detailing the symbiotic relationship of the manor's foundations with the root, was a faint sketch. It depicted a series of concentric circles, almost like an iris, with an arrow pointing to a small, irregular notch at its base. Beneath it, a single precise word: threshold. My gaze snapped from the journal to the floor. I got down on my hands and knees, ignoring the protesting creak of my joints, and began to tap. The thrumming intensified here, directly beneath me, a low pulse against my fingertips. I ran my hands over the polished wood, searching for any imperfection, any seam that didn't quite align. It was exactly where the notch in Elara's drawing would be, if the concentric circles represented the room itself. I pressed harder, then pushed. I recoiled, my heart hammering against my ribs. A hidden passage, just as I'd suspected. The light was swallowed almost immediately by the gloom, revealing only a short, rough-hewn tunnel descending steeply. The walls were uneven, slick with moisture, and laced with thin, wiry roots that seemed to writhe in the beam's glow. This wasn't a bricked-up cellar passage. This was organic. Taking a deep breath, I swung my legs into the opening and began my descent. The air grew heavier, warmer, each breath tasting of the soil itself. The tunnel narrowed, forcing me to hunch over, my shoulders scraping against the damp, gritty stone and fibrous tendrils. The thrumming sensation grew stronger, becoming less a vibration and more a rhythmic pulse, like a slow, deep heartbeat. It seemed to emanate from the very rock around me. It was vast, impossibly so, stretching beyond the reach of my light in every direction. The air was thick with a moist, earthy fog, so dense it clung to my clothes and hair, making the space feel immense and claustrophobic all at once. The light struggled to penetrate it, creating hazy, indistinct shapes in the distance. But these weren't walls of stone. They were alive. Everywhere I looked, colossal roots, thick as tree trunks, snaked and twisted, forming a grotesque subterranean forest. They pulsed with a faint internal luminescence, a sickly green light that seemed to ebb and flow with the thrumming I now felt vibrating through my entire body. Between the roots, enormous fleshy fungal growths bloomed, some iridescent, others a dull, bruised purple. They dripped with a viscous, clear fluid that pooled in shallow depressions on the cavern floor, reflecting the faint green glow like 1,000 malevolent eyes. The air here was different too. The earthy smell was still present, but now overlaid with a powerful, cloying sweetness, like rotting flowers and something metallic, almost like iron. It was the smell of life and of decay, intertwined. The thrumming intensified, vibrating up through my feet, making my teeth ache. This wasn't just a cellar or a hidden chamber. This was the true heart of Blackwood Manor. It wasn't just built on a strange foundation. It was the foundation. Elara hadn't just been tending a garden. He had been tending this. And now I was standing in its core. The entity knew I was here. I wasn't just an intruder. I was prey. My fingers, pressed against the parquet, felt the pulse directly. It wasn't a steady beat, but an organic, irregular rhythm, like a massive, slow-beating heart. The sound was strongest here, directly beneath the spot where Elara's journal had fallen open, hinting at a hidden passage or a significant structural weakness. The parquet was a meticulous herringbone pattern, each piece fitted with expert precision. No obvious handles, no visible gaps. I tapped again, moving my palm slowly across the floorboards. Thud. Thud, thud. Then a slightly different resonance. Thunk. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but distinct. I pressed down, then shifted my weight, testing the area. Nothing. Frustration pricked at me. This house didn't give up its secrets easily. I got up, grabbed a heavy brass letter opener from the desk, and knelt again. Carefully, I began to probe the hairline cracks between the wood pieces around the thunk spot. The tip of the opener slid easily into one particular seam, deeper than the others. I wiggled it, felt a faint resistance, then a soft click. A section of the parquet, about 2 feet by 3, didn't immediately rise, but shifted, sinking a fraction of an inch. I pushed harder, grunting with the effort, and with a soft groan of old wood, the section pivoted inward, revealing a dark, square opening. It was a shallow space, perhaps a crawl space or a forgotten utility access, but it was alive. A fine, almost invisible mist hung in the space, catching the faint light from the study. It wasn't just roots. There were nodules, bulbous growths that looked like diseased organs clinging to the underside of the floor joists. A thin, viscous fluid glistened on their surfaces. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a structural issue or a forgotten pipe. This was organic, insidious, and spreading. This was the root. As I stared, a strange pressure began to build behind my eyes, a dull ache that quickly sharpened. The edges of the opening seemed to waver, the air above it shimmering. The sweet, cloying smell grew stronger, filling my lungs, tasting metallic on my tongue. Then, the study began to dissolve. The mahogany desk blurred, the bookshelves melted into indistinct shapes. The light from the window became a hazy, diffused glow. I wasn't in the study anymore. I was trapped, in a vast, open expanse, choked by an impenetrable gray mist. The air was heavy, damp, and smelled of something acrid, metallic, and utterly desolate. Vague, towering structures loomed in the distance, their outlines indistinct, like skeletal fingers reaching through the murk. I knew this place, or a distorted echo of it. The guilt clawed at my throat, but it wasn't just a memory. It was happening, now. I could hear whispers, indistinct, like the rustling of dry leaves, or the desperate murmurs of forgotten voices. No, I choked, my voice raw, barely a whisper in the suffocating silence. Not again. Shapes began to form in the mist, spectral figures that drifted closer. I knew them. I felt them. The weight of my past tragedy, the faces of those I couldn't save, pressed in. But their features weren't just hidden. They were wrong. Their hands, when they reached, were gnarled, root-like. It was the thrumming, amplified, warped, speaking directly into my mind. Belong. Find peace. Release. A profound, ancient sense of belonging washed over me. A terrifying comfort that threatened to drown out my fear. It wasn't a gentle embrace. It was an invasive, possessive pull, like a parasitic twin trying to merge. But I knew the cost. It wasn't healing. It was consumption. I stumbled backward, my hands flailing, trying to push away the encroaching specters, trying to break free of the mental prison. The ground beneath my feet felt soft, yielding like damp soil. Join, become, one. It wasn't a command, but an invitation, a promise of utter cessation of pain, of absolute integration. The lines between the prison yard, the manor, and my own mind blurred into an indistinguishable, terrifying tapestry. I was losing myself, slipping into a terrifying, verdant oblivion. With a gasp that tore through my lungs, I snapped back. The study was there, solid and real, though the air still tasted of that sickly sweetness, and the thrumming still echoed in my ears. I stared at my hands. They were trembling, but they were my hands. No roots, no tendrils. Yet, a phantom touch lingered, a deep-seated hum that resonated from somewhere deep inside me. I felt violated, like something vast and ancient had reached into my mind and taken a piece, leaving behind a terrifying, intimate connection. And the worst part? My grief, raw and exposed, was precisely the weakness it sought to exploit, a gaping maw for its tendrils to sink into. But as quickly as the terrifying comfort had washed over me, a colder, harder resolve solidified within me. This wasn't belonging. It was absorption. This wasn't solace. It was surrender. And I wasn't ready to give in. Not yet. I stumbled back from the wall, the phantom touch of its cool, damp stone still prickling my skin. My breath hitched, a ragged sound in the cavernous silence of the manor. My very self. The thought alone was a galvanic shock, clearing the fog from my mind. My gaze drifted to the conservatory. A monstrous glass lung attached to the manor's side, glowing faintly in the gloom. It was the heart of the infestation, the most concentrated point of Elara's peculiar legacy. If I could destroy it, perhaps I could starve whatever malevolent consciousness was trying to claim me. I needed a weapon, something blunt and heavy. My eyes scanned the dusty hall, landing on a forgotten fire axe mounted on a wall, its head tarnished, its handle worn smooth. It looked heavy, but desperation lent me strength. I tore it from its brackets, the dull thud echoing through the house. The air thickened, heavy with the cloying, damp scent of rich earth and decaying leaves. A smell I'd come to associate with the entity itself. It was almost as if the house knew my intentions. Every step I took towards the conservatory a defiant act. Reaching the conservatory doors, I pushed them open with a grunt. The air inside hit me like a physical wall, humid, fetid, and teeming with the aggressive life that thrived there. The glass panes, once clear, were now obscured by a dense, intricate network of green and black veins, obscuring the outside world. The plants, grown monstrous and distorted, writhed in the artificial twilight, their leaves unfurling with unnerving speed. Some were almost skeletal, others fleshy and bulbous, pulsing with a faint, sickly luminescence. "No more," I growled, my voice raw. I hefted the axe. My first swing was clumsy but potent, cleaving through a thick, woody stem that had coiled itself around a defunct heating pipe. A viscous amber sap oozed from the severed stalk, smelling metallic and sweet, like old blood and honey. I swung again and again, a frantic rhythm of destruction. The sound of breaking glass was deafening, a counterpoint to the manor's rising fury. The plants retaliated. Tendrils, previously inert, lashed out like whips, cracking against the glass around me, then against my arms and legs. A thick, thorny vine, as wide as my forearm, snaked out from behind a towering skeletal plant and wrapped around my ankle, yanking me off balance. I hit the damp, moss-covered floor with a sickening thud, the axe clattering away from my grasp. Panic flared. The vine tightened, digging its thorns into my flesh. I thrashed, trying to kick it off, but more tendrils emerged from the dense foliage, seeking purchase. They moved with an unnatural speed, not like plants at all, but like living, conscious predators. One snaked up my arm, squeezing, its surface surprisingly strong and unyielding. Then, the world warped. The glass ceiling above me, previously obscured by plant matter, dissolved into a swirling, impenetrable white. The walls around me melted, the grotesque plants receding into a formless gray. It pressed in from all sides, reducing visibility to mere feet, swallowing sound. My breath plumed in front of me, stark white against the gray. The ground was hard, unforgiving, littered with pebbles and what felt like loose, sharp grit. My mind screamed illusion, but my senses insisted it was real. They didn't feel like plant matter anymore. They felt like the grip of despair itself, pressing down on my chest, around my throat. I tried to scream, but the sound was choked, swallowed by the fog, a desperate croak that died before it could escape. A profound, ancient sorrow washed over me, not my own, but something vast and encompassing, a cosmic sigh of endless regret. My struggles weakened. A sharp, searing pain shot up my leg. The vine around my ankle had tightened with a final, vicious squeeze, and I heard a sickening crack. My vision blurred. The axe, somewhere in the illusionary fog, felt impossibly far away. Lucian had hardened in me, sharp and cold as a winter wind. This wasn't a comfort. It was a trap, a lure disguised as solace. My grief might have been its opening, but my will, I realized, was still my own. I wouldn't become another root in its sprawling subterranean network. A new urgency surged through me, replacing the paralyzing fear. Elara's journals, I now knew, held more than just botanical notes. They held secrets, blueprints for this monstrous organism that had consumed her. My focus narrowed, honed to a razor edge. I started tearing through her study again, not looking for specific dates or plant names, but for anything hidden, anything that felt final. I ran my hands over the spines of books, tapped along the paneling, even checked the underside of the heavy oak desk. Nothing. The study felt picked over, its secrets already revealed to me, or so I thought. But the nagging sensation persisted, a whisper at the back of my mind that I was missing something crucial. Then I noticed it. Not in the study, but in the small, rarely used sitting room adjacent to it, a room I'd dismissed as merely decorative. Tucked away behind a large, forgotten tapestry depicting some forgotten pastoral scene, there was a small, ornate wooden box. It wasn't locked, simply held shut by a tarnished brass clasp. My fingers trembled as I unlatched it. Inside, nestled on a bed of dried, dark leaves that looked suspiciously like the tendrils I'd seen growing in the deeper parts of the manor, lay a single, slender journal. It wasn't like the others, bound in leather. This one's cover felt organic, almost like compressed bark, and its pages, though thin, had a fibrous quality. It felt alive in my hands, warm and faintly damp. I opened it. Elara's elegant script was there, but it was different. More hurried, more erratic, the lines sometimes slanting wildly across the page. This wasn't just a journal. It was a confession, a final testament. I flipped past pages filled with increasingly desperate observations about the great root, its sentience, its desire. My eyes snagged on the last entry, scrawled across 2 pages, the words large and sprawling, as if written in a frenzy. It understands sorrow. It feeds on it, but it also offers release. To truly become one, to transcend this mortal coil, one must offer not just the body but the very essence of suffering. A choice. Emerging. The final garden. The tendrils will embrace. The heart will beat with its pulse. The mind will bloom with its ancient knowledge. It is not death. It is transformation. The ultimate surrender. The blood, yes, but more. The sorrow, the despair, the willingness to be unmade, to be remade, to feed and to be fed, to be the conduit, the vessel. My choice. My beautiful, terrible choice. The root hungers, and I am ready to be its bloom. My breath caught in my throat, a dry, rasping sound. Elara hadn't just been a victim of this thing. He had, at some point, chosen it. He had embraced its monstrous invitation, willingly offered her sorrow, her essence, to become part of its vast living network. She hadn't been fighting for escape. He had been preparing for surrender. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The horror wasn't just the consumption, but the complicity. The root didn't just take, it seduced. It offered a grotesque kind of peace, an end to suffering in exchange for self. And now it was offering the same to me. The air in the sitting room grew heavy, almost viscous. The rhythmic thrumming intensified, vibrating through my bones. I could feel the house, the entire estate, demanding an answer. The walls seemed to pulse, the floorboards beneath my feet subtly shifting. There was no clear path, only the demand. Succumb, surrender, become one. The temptation, insidious and profound, clawed at the edges of my resolve. To let go, to stop fighting, to allow the ancient embrace to wash away the sharp edges of my own grief, to meld into something vast and indifferent. But then Elara's words, "My beautiful, terrible choice," echoed again. I saw the madness in her final scrawl, the terrifying acceptance, and I knew, with a certainty that cut through the fog of temptation, that this was not my path. This was not release. It was oblivion, a final total erasure. A fierce, desperate anger flared within me. I wasn't Elara. My grief might be a vulnerability, but it was also a source of strength, a reason to fight. I wouldn't be its bloom. I wouldn't be its conduit. It sensed my defiance. It didn't like it. I felt cornered, yes, but also a spark of something new, a desperate, almost reckless determination. If the choice was between becoming this thing or finding a way out, no matter how impossible, then the choice was clear. I would find a way, even if it meant tearing this house and myself apart in the process. My choice. The words scraped along the inside of my skull, a fingernail on a chalkboard, leaving a raw, exposed feeling. Elara hadn't been a victim. He had chosen. The thought was a venomous seed, sprouting tendrils of dread that tightened around my chest. And I, like Elara, was caught in its maw. A low thrum vibrated through the floorboards, up my legs, settling in my bones. The organic growths that festooned the walls, once merely unsettling, now writhed with a subtle internal motion. They thickened, swelled, their surfaces slick and glistening under the faint phosphorescent glow they emitted. The manor was no longer just infested. It was becoming the entity. I stumbled back, my hand instinctively going to the heavy iron poker I'd brought from the hearth. It felt pathetically inadequate, a toy against a mountain. I had to rip free of this place, or at least understand what Elara had given herself to. "What do you want?" I croaked, my voice swallowed by the hungry silence. No answer, just the accelerating thrum, the almost imperceptible expansion of the walls. It wasn't just fog. It tasted metallic and faintly floral, a perfume of decay and new growth. The world around me began to distort. The familiar lines of the hallway blurred, the ceiling seeming to stretch impossibly high, then drop down, pressing in. The mist thickened, swirling, obscuring my vision until I could barely see my outstretched hand. I was no longer in Blackwood Manor. The swirling mist had become an impenetrable wall of white, muffling all sound, stealing all sense of direction. I squinted, trying to pierce the veil, but it was like looking into a blank canvas. The air was frigid, biting at my exposed skin, and the metallic, earthy scent intensified, now mixed with something acrid, like old rust. The fog seemed to press in from all sides, a suffocating blanket. No walls, no fences, just the endless, impenetrable white. It was not a voice, but a thought, a feeling, a deep-seated understanding that burrowed into my consciousness. She understood. This was the entity, not a creature with limbs or eyes, but a pervasive, consuming intelligence. You seek peace. She sought peace. It is the same. The poker felt like a feather in my grip, useless. How do you fight a thought? How do you strike at a pervasive gloom? This was the true horror. Not a monster to be slain, but a fundamental force. A slow, inevitable absorption. I remembered Elara's journals, her meticulous records of the strange flora, her descent into a quiet, almost serene madness. She hadn't been fighting it. He had been nurturing it. And in return, it had offered her peace, an end to her sorrow, a melding with something vast and eternal. Give yourself. Let go. The suggestion was insidious, seductive. My personal tragedy, the grief that had driven me to Blackwood Manor, surged to the forefront of my mind. The entity wasn't offering pain. It was offering oblivion. A way to shed the burden of my past, to simply be, without the crushing weight of memory and regret. My fingers tightened around the poker, knuckles white. No, not like this. Elara might have chosen it, but I wouldn't. I couldn't. My determination flared, a desperate spark in the suffocating fog. I might not be able to destroy it, but I could resist its invitation. I didn't know what I was fighting or even where I was going, but I refused to stand still and be consumed. The frigid air bit at my lungs, and the metallic taste filled my mouth. The fog swirled faster, trying to disorient me, to wrap around my limbs and pull me down. My foot caught on something, and I stumbled, falling hard onto the gritty pavement. The poker skittered away, lost in the whiteout. I pushed myself up, scrambling, my hands scraping against the rough ground. You cannot escape yourself. You cannot escape sorrow. The thought was a mournful dirge, a truth I knew all too well. The fog wasn't just around me anymore. It was in me. The boundaries of myself began to blur, my individual thoughts dissolving into a vast communal consciousness. I saw flashes of Elara's memories, her quiet moments in the garden, her slow acceptance, her final peaceful surrender. It was a tapestry of countless lives, endless cycles of sorrow and release. My breath hitched. This was it. The choice. Not to die, but to become something else. To be a part of the root, another tendril in its sprawling, ancient network. A final, desperate surge of self-preservation. I pushed back, a raw, wordless scream tearing through my throat. I wouldn't be another voice in its chorus. I would carry my sorrow, my memories, myself. The effort was immense, like tearing myself from a deep, warm sleep. The fog recoiled, just slightly, a momentary withdrawal. Then, a sudden jarring shift. The gritty pavement vanished. The air was still heavy, still scented with decay and growth, but the overwhelming, consuming presence had receded. I was back in the hallway, collapsed against a wall that was now merely damp stone, not pulsating bark. The poker lay a few feet away, glinting dully. I was shaking, my body racked with a profound exhaustion, but I was me. Or at least I thought I was. The manor still thrummed, still breathed, but it felt different, as if it had tasted me and found me wanting, or perhaps had merely taken a sample, a fragment. I walked, or rather stumbled, through the familiar yet now utterly alien corridors. The front door, still standing ajar from my earlier entry, seemed impossibly far. Each step was a monumental effort, my body heavy, my mind clouded. I pushed through the doorway, out into the cool, damp air of the Pacific Northwest. The fog was gone here, replaced by the usual gray drizzle. It looked the same, yet I knew it wasn't. And I wasn't the same either. As I walked away, not daring to look back, I felt a faint, almost imperceptible pull. I hadn't succumbed entirely, but I hadn't escaped unscathed. A piece of the entity's horror, a fragment of its ancient consciousness, had rooted itself within me. Blackwood Manor remained, an unbroken ancient evil, its tendrils now reaching beyond its stone walls, into the world, through me. It had merely found a new way to endure.